my name is William Kumwembe and this is Business Time. It's a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories that make headlines in the country. And in the program today, we look at the tussle over the electricity single buyer role, who is the ultimate loser, the consumer. And also in the program, inflation rises to 13% in February. We speak to experts on what the future holds. That's inside Business Time. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time. In our main story in the program today, in 2016, the country adopted a single buyer model in the electricity supply and generation sector in a bid to ensure effectiveness and efficiency of operators in the sector. Some years later, the country saw some adjustments in its law, which saw the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority granting a license to Power Market Limited as a single buyer, which was earlier on handled by the Electricity Supply Corporation of Malawi, ESCOM. There's been battles lately seen by several other stakeholders saying the consumer would be the ultimate loser over the conversation. But our journalist Isaac Salima caught up with some of the officials from the Power Market Limited to find out their role and what does this whole mean in the country's electricity generation and supply business.
Under Section 3 of Electricity Act, Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority granted Power Market Limited the license of buying and selling electricity from independent power producers and also importing and selling the electricity outside the country. The arrangement saw ESCOM remaining with the mandate of transmitting, distributing as it holds system operator license. The model has, however, received mixed reactions from some quarters that fear that this could push electricity end users to pay more to get the service. Consumers Association of Malawi last week in a press release said the establishment of a single buyer model does not make economic sense. It says the creation of Power Market Limited is an insult and lacks sensitivity by the government by creating unnecessary and unjustified cost for the supply of electricity in the country. However, Power Market Limited's Director of Marketing and Corporate Services, Vilanti Jana, told journalists in Blantyre that there is a lot of misinformation about the single buyer model, saying consumers will not be paying more to get electricity if the company starts its operations.
Every licensee has got a portion approved by MERA. So ESCOM with 3 licensees, each licensee there have got their own portions. As a single buyer, we have got a portion of 2 kwacha. So you see, the single buyer function was born in ESCOM. It means it stayed there for 2 years or so before it came out. So this portion of 2 kwacha was sitting there in ESCOM until Power Market Limited was registered and established. And it is the same 2 kwacha that we have continued to use for our operations. So in essence, at the moment, tariffs are not going to go high because the PML exists. No, not at the moment. It is crucial because it was born out of reforms, and as a country we have been undertaking various reforms, and in the power sector reforms we undertaken that saw the birth of Vigenco and the birth of Power Market Limited, who is the single buyer licensee. Our function is to buy and sell electric power and bring in investment. We are also involved in planning, so we collaborate with other players like ESCOM in our long-term planning to ensure that we procure power that will meet the demand of the country.
The Director of Information in the Ministry of Information, Chikumbusa Ntumozi, speaking at the workshop, urged the media to help in conveying right information to the general public about the arrangement.
Information is power. Power Market Limited came up with this this training just to enlighten the media on their operations. And one of the issues they want to inform the media is their role in the energy sector. As you can see, they're saying that by 2025 they want the country to produce 1,000 megawatts, and they're responsible for that because they're the ones who are supposed to be who are responsible for the single buyer. So they want to enlighten the public on their operations, and also that from 2016, when the act was changed, the act was amended, there's been unbundling of ESCOM, GENCO, and power markets. So just to enlighten the people to avoid big sub, that's why they've come up with this training workshop. And this is a set of its kind. They had one in Nilogwe, there was another one in Zuzu. The idea is just to enlighten the public on what they have been doing. So I would like to urge the journalists to take advantage of this so they can find more on what programs they have in the power sector.
Power Market Limited is yet to start its operations as some logistical arrangements are yet to be concluded.
Now, the Lilongwe board on Tuesday launched the $1.5 million water project aimed at easing water situation in the city. This is part of a lump sum project that is being funded by the World Bank. Our journalist Wes Gausi caught up with chairperson of the Lilongwe board in this interview.
This installation means that we have expanded our network. What it means is we've not only expanded our network, but the capacity of water that can actually go to the people. We're going to go as far as Nigeria, where we would not go before. We are going to be able to take this water quite far. So that's what really it means. It means we're going further. It was 1.5 million cubic meters before, and now we have increased the capacity to 3.5 million cubic meters. At the moment, I would say we will be able to cater to most. We may not be able to cater to everyone yet because it's a continuous program. At the moment, Lilongwe Water Board, we produce 125,000 cubic meters of water which goes out. But we are increasing that capacity. Another 50,000 is coming on it, and we will keep on increasing. So at the moment, yes, what does it mean to them? There will be an improvement. Not yet everybody, we're not yet at 100%. We are at 80%, 85% at the moment.
For quite some time, Malawi has been a net importer, a situation that has been piling pressure on the forex availability in the country. The country's insatiable appetite for imports versus limited or thin capacity to produce for exports has been a challenge for so many years. Now, recently, the government struck deals with the Sudanese government to export several commodities, including rice and maize flour, to ensure that it eases the pressure that has been existing. However, the country has failed to meet the requirements in as far as exports to South Sudan is concerned. What is at stake? This is the question our journalist Chimwemwe Mangaza attempts in this report.
We signed an MOU with South Sudan to promote export of various products like maize flour, sugar, rice, groundnuts, beans, and among other things. What is important for the public to know is that exporting is not a one-off transaction. It is actually a process. So we are working with the South Sudanese government to make sure that we address some of the critical areas like the market requirements there. I say that we have been cooperating and samples. We also sent some trucks through some private sector companies as a dry run that might be encountered by exporters, transport corridor to South Sudan. And a number of issues were discovered, including multiple bonds that exporters are supposed to pay for. And I'm glad that this has been addressed with support of the Export Development Fund. An agreement was signed with the Afrexim Bank for about 2.5 million value, to cover, transit risks, so that our exporters do not really encounter, some of these challenges. More important that were observed, and as a government, through the Ministry of Trade, in collaboration with the agencies like the MIDC, Malawi Bureau of Standards, we have been working together with the the South Sudanese government to also address these issues. They tested some of the samples of our maize flour in South Sudan. They even tested some of the samples in Kenya. And just last month, they were in the country. We hosted a delegation from South Sudan, and they visited some of the processing facilities like Last Farm, ADMAC warehouses, to see the capacity of the country to supply, and process some of the goods that are being demanded in South Sudan. And I must say that they were satisfied with our capacities, with our equipment, as well as the capabilities of the Maritime Bureau of Standards to take advantage of this MOU, to engage the Chamber of Commerce in South Sudan, to engage the private sector, let them undertake export missions, and they have business meetings with the private sector in South Sudan. Because as a government, we have facilitated this framework, we have facilitated this market, but the government does not trade. The government will not mobilize the products and load in trucks and they send it to South Sudan. We create a conducive environment. We have facilitated the market, and we expect the private sector to aggressively take advantage, of this market that has opened in South Sudan by engaging MIDC, by engaging the private sector in South Sudan, and really use the MOU framework to export to South Sudan under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I must say that those are good ideas, and the MOU is valid for so many years. It will be renewed every 5 years. So we're getting the second year, and we expect the exports to be incremental. And we are aware that the government, through the Minister of Agriculture, is undertaking a number of programs to promote the production of various commodities. Talk of the agricultural commercialization, which is aimed at bringing together, off-takers of agricultural produce together with the producer organizations to work together and receive, for instance, matching grants from this particular project to invest in value chains that are being promoted by government, including these ones that we're talking about that are in high demand in South Sudan. So we expect that with passage of time, the exports will be incremental. We are going to be exporting more and more commodities, and even as of now, the country produces quite a lot of commodities like beans, like maize. It's just a question of processing these maize into maize flour. Companies like Last Farm just to potential to process and export really of these commodities that we are talking about. The government just needed to facilitate the removal of some of the potential restrictions or barriers to clear some of these things. Then it should become easier for the private sector to export these commodities to South Sudan. So we are looking forward to increase exports to South Sudan. We are looking forward to the private sector engage the Malawi Investments and Trade Center and get more information about the products being demanded in South Sudan. And we expect these private sector companies to work together with our farmers across the country, to mobilize and aggregate the commodities and process them, add value for export to South Sudan. So I must say that the potential is there. We cannot fail to meet the demand of these demanded commodities in South Sudan.
Remember, this is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories. And my name is William Kumwembe. We'll be right back. And when we get back, we'll look at the trends in as far as inflation is concerned in the country. That's when we get back inside Business Time. Welcome back, and moving on with the program. In February, headline inflation went up to 13% from 12.1% according to figures from the National Statistical Office. Experts fear this would continue to be the trend in the coming months as the country remains in a lean period. Of course, food prices have contributed heavily on the rising inflation. Not forgetting, of course, the pressure that is coming from external forces, including an ever-rising fuel prices. Now, the question remains to say, what does the future hold? We posed this question to some of economic experts, and we have the detail in this report.
Latest figures from the National Statistical Office show that inflation was recorded at 12.1% in January 2022, the highest since June 2017. Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences-based economist Bechani Chereni says the country is on a very tight situation, evidenced by a volatile foreign exchange situation, among other things.
You see, when we look at the parameters the way they are right now, when we consider, for example, the fact that we don't have enough foreign exchange in the country, Forex cover is way below, for example, the 3-month requirement. We are hovering somewhere around 4 to 6 weeks of foreign exchange cover for import cover. And also when you consider the fact that in terms of production, we haven't been as active to produce the commodities that we need in the country. We have not been exporting enough as well. All this, they lead to, of course, us having the kwacha losing some value. And we also know papers have been written. For example, one can read a paper by Dr. Mangani, for instance, at Chancellor College in Zomba. I did one as well. It shows quite clearly that our inflation in this country, it is actually imported inflation, and therefore, because we are importing a lot of commodities that we need, that we require, you will note that the inflation may not necessarily be around where the government is saying that it's going to be around 9.1%.
Executive Director of the Economics Association of Malawi, Frank Chiguta, weighs in his views.
I think inflation is going to be higher than the 9.1%, but whether the average is going to go as high as 14%, I think that's something that we need more statistics to project. But generally, I think the inflation will be higher than the average of 9.1% in the national budget. I'm saying this because the prospect for non-food inflation to decrease in the course of the year are quite minimal because of what is happening on the international front. So the cost of things like fuel, fertilizer, transportation are not expected to decrease over the course of the year because of the issues that I've mentioned. So what is going to drive inflation over the course of the year is probably food inflation. But as we know, the food inflation is also faced with a number of risks, including the cyclones that affected the southern part of the country, and also the delayed onset of rain during the 2021-2022 agriculture season.
Director for Center for Research and Consultancy, Milward Tobias, said in an interview that it was clear that inflation rate will be higher than projected.
Now, in other business news, Malawi Stock Exchange-listed National Bank of Malawi has reiterated its commitment to contributing towards the national financial inclusion agenda. This was said on Friday by NBM Chief Executive Officer Makfasi Kawawa, who engaged some clients, both existing and potential, on how the bank operates. Our journalist Tabi Kamangala was there and now reports.
Banks perform a variety of operations for their customers, ranging from basic or primary functions, including day-to-day transactions. The services are meant to target those who want to lend, borrow, or indeed invest. But what happens when some of these services are compromised? This is the question that National Bank of Malawi sought to rectify. As following views by some stakeholders that certain individuals are discriminated against and excluded from some financial services, the bank engaged some of its stakeholders in Blantyre in a quest to maintain a close working relationship with them.
Okay, every time we are introducing new products, and every product that we introduce is aimed at a particular faction of society or the economy where we believe there is a need that as a bank we need to satisfy. The most recent products that we've offered have been largely to do with those categories of our customers that one would think maybe they haven't been paid much attention to. For instance, we have the young entrepreneur product where we want to encourage people that have ideas, that want to do something, to come to the bank, for say a loan and other services that can help them run a business better, but also fund it better. We have others like directed at ladies. We have Mayangate, for instance, and in recent times we've also seen the need to bridge a gap, a funding gap that the so-called famously, Bank Conde, groupings, face. So these are some of the recently introduced products which are aimed at those that one would term the marginalized in as far as access to bank loans are concerned. We believe, we have an offering for everybody, and by targeting these, we are actually closing the gap that has been there.
Some of the stakeholders present included members of the Vendors Association of Blantyre and Minibus Association. The engagement also involved touring the bank's facilities. Chairlady of the Vendors Association of Blantyre, Mavis Rahim, stated that the engagement had been very successful.
The engagement has been very successful. We have learned things that we did not know. We would come to the bank but had no idea of how it operates. We have seen how beneficial it is to have such engagement, especially if you are a business owner.
Well, that report also brings us to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time. It's a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories that make headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe. Always remember, if it doesn't make money, then it doesn't make sense. Stay safe and bye for now.